Okay, we are here with Noelle Foizen, the director of the Opioid Response Unit. Noelle, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Larry. I'm really happy to be on the show.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. As you said, my name is Noelle Foizen. I'm the director of the Managing Director's Office Opioid Response Unit for the City of Philadelphia. I come to this work, though, as a trained social worker and also an emergency manager. I spent 10 years at the city's Office of Emergency Management before I moved over here in 2020 to start running the newly formed Opioid Response Unit at that time.
And how did the opioid response team sort of come together?
Yeah, so it actually came out of it was a natural progression. If you recall, in 2016, Mayor Kenny launched an opioid task force. And from that process, there was a lot of recommendations and implementation plan that came out of that. In 2018, he declared an emergency in Kensington, and that's actually where I got involved at the Office of Emergency Management. And I ran that operation over there, and that was titled the Philadelphia Resilience Project. There's a lot of work that happened during that time. When the emergency declaration expired at the end of 2019, there was not by any means this thought that we've solved everything, we're done, it's no longer an emergency. We actually recognized that there needed to be an office that was tracking all the interdepartmental work that was happening across 35 city agencies to try to improve quality of life and conditions in Kensington and for the individuals that are struggling with substance misuse. So that's where I came in. And so they asked me to run this operation. I've been doing it since 2020. It was a little challenging our first year because we launched literally right before the COVID shutdown. So it was challenging in the beginning. But we do have, there's 4 strategy groups that work. A lot of the names that you would want to be involved in this effort. So for our treatment strategy, DBHIDS leads that. For our prevention strategy, public health department leads that. For our public safety strategy, it's joint led between the police department and the Office of Criminal Justice. And our community support strategy is led by Health and Human Services and Community Services. And so it's all the subject matter experts, the brightest minds that we have working at the city that are all working together to solve this problem. And my role is to make sure that we're coordinating, we're not duplicating effort, we have the ability to advocate for resources, policy changes, those types of things. And so that's the role of our unit. We do put out an action plan every year. Our next action plan is coming out in March. And what that action plan does is that it provides the framework for accountability, right, for the residents of Philadelphia. Like, what is happening with this crisis? What are the pieces that we're trying to move along? And it clearly identifies pieces that we're trying to accomplish in that calendar year. And then the following year's action plan provides a summary of like, this is what we're able to move forward. This is what we had challenges with. This is what we forecast we'll be doing in the upcoming calendar year. And so our next action plan is coming out in March, but our current action plan is on our website at philadoca.org/opioids if you'd like to check it out.
So, it'd be fair to say that your office is a hub to
Yes,
bring all different agencies together in this town.
absolutely.
One of the things you said that I find encouraging is that your background is in social work.
Mhm.
And this always seemed like more of a problem that required that kind of background rather than maybe a law enforcement background or even a more medical background. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I like that you caught on that because it is something that I find as a strength that I bring to this role is that social work background because my positioning within the managing director's office, like I'm not part of public safety, I'm not part of health and human services, like I'm completely outside of that. And with my training in macro social work, like I understand how people operate within systems and how to work collaboratively to move something forward. And so I've been the face of everything that we're doing currently in Kensington. And so I attend a ton of community meetings. I constantly am replying to constituent emails, doing a lot of problem solving, but we're always focused on the like larger systems at play and how they're impacting the individuals. And a big priority for our unit is trying to hold in balance the individual that's struggling with substance misuse and the community impact of that. And at times, they get off scale, but that's really our role here is trying to create a better Philadelphia for all our residents here.
So you're heading up this office. You have some resources to do that. And then the opioid settlement
Yeah.
funds start coming to Philadelphia. And that's already sort of begun. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And last week we reported on the press conference that you and the mayor and other members of the community and the administration attended. So can you tell us a little bit about these funds and sort of what the general plan is here?
Yeah, so we're actually really excited about the settlement. And as you mentioned, the announcement last week, it's really going to give us, it's adding capacity, right? And so there's been a lot of resources that the city has dedicated towards this, but there's never enough. And so having this infusion of cash with allowable uses that it needs to be focused on, right? So gave us the ability to actually push forward some things that have been in the planning stage, but we haven't actually been able to implement, right? And so one big thing that we're really excited about is mobile methadone. That's something that the Department of Behavioral Health has been scoping and figuring out the framework and what it could look like and having all the regulatory conversations that you need to have, but it takes money to actually launch it, right? And so having the capacity to do that. Another thing I'm excited about was the wound care van that we did a small pilot over the summer. And the wound care van is really important for our work because it really speaks to the change in the drug supply that we're seeing in Philadelphia. And so previously it was fentanyl, and that is it's in every drug now. But now addition to that is xylazine or tranq, which is a animal sedative that's been added, which just creates these absolutely horrific wounds on individuals to the point where it's becoming an access to a barrier to accessing services. So people aren't able to access treatment or housing necessarily because their wounds are at such a level of requiring medical attention that the staff don't have those capabilities, right? And so having these mobile wound care vans out in the community that are addressing those wounds is really helping to bridge accessing services for the individuals that are most impacted that we're trying to get in. Another thing that I'm really excited about that we're funding is additional housing opportunities to support long-term recovery. And so that's something that if you're an individual and you're going in and say you're homeless before you go into treatment, when you come out of treatment, if you still don't have a home, chances are it's going to be really difficult to maintain that journey on recovery. And so we have the opportunity to create 200 more placements within the system. And so it's creating more throughput in the types of placements that people that are in recovery are looking for. And so housing first, couples housing, master leasing, those types of programs that we really see positive outcomes from for individuals. Another thing that I'm really excited about that we're funding through the settlement is a really large investment in a community-led, trauma-informed, equity-focused planning effort that's happening in Kensington. It's going to be a holistic master planning effort. Kensington Health and Wellness Corridors was the working plan name. But with that funding, we're actually providing the community the opportunity to have a say in how these investments are being played out with the guardrails in place of we're trying to make sure that people can stay in their homes. And so providing support around home repairs, rent relief, foreclosure support, provide support for parks. And so they're able to be safe and used for family-friendly activities, dedicated funding for the schools. And with this money, we're really excited because we'll be able to bring people to the table as part of kensingtonplan.org, where people can learn more about it. It's a really, it's something that on the administration side, we're really committed to. We've spent the last 18 months meeting regularly with Kensington community leaders, and we've heard their requests for support, and this is something that we're really happy to deliver on, and it is the largest thing that we're investing on from the settlement. And so that's something that a lot of us at the city are going to be involved with moving forward. And I just want to stress, like, we're not driving this planning effort at all. It's completely owned by the community, and I think that's so important, especially with transitions that happen in city government. For a plan to be sustainable, it's fantastic that they're taking up the charge to actually own it and have a say on how things are moving forward. And I'm really happy to have a minor seat at that table to move that forward. One other thing, sorry, Larry, one other thing I want to plug is another big thing that we're funding from the settlement is the Overdose Prevention and Community Healing Fund. Applications are open now. Like just went off. Applications are open now. They close February 3rd. There's 2 types of grants that are available, $100,000 program grants and $20,000 capacity building grants. Those capacity building grants could be a lifeline for those small grassroots organizations, because you can use it for staffing support, for rent, all types of uses. There's information on our website. We're partnering with Scattergood Foundation to launch that. So you can also go to the Scattergood website. But it's intended for smaller organizations that might not have access to larger funding opportunities like this. The ideal organization is working in Philadelphia, has a annual budget that's under $5 million, and has a track record of engaging Philadelphians around this issue. And we are it's a citywide fund, but we are targeting zip codes within Kensington and North Philadelphia, and that's tracking with trends that we're seeing in fatal overdoses, and that's why those zip codes are being targeted. So.
And one of the things I just want to mention, these funds are going to be distributed over 18 years.
Yes, yeah.
So some of these and that's not equal funding every year, to my understanding, but there's going to be funding there for these programs for almost 2 decades.
Yeah, and so that's a great point. And so when settlement, the way it works out is that there's ranging amount each year from 9 million to 14 million. And so that's why this first year, like, we wanted to make sure that we were really creating as much impact as possible with this first infusion of funds. But there are absolutely projects that will be sustained through the settlement moving forward, but then also things that we will move on to general fund, because we will be committed to them continuing to happen.
Okay, I'd like to bring in Denise Marie here and throw that behind.
Oh, Denise, I think you're on mute. It's the Zoom way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for joining us, and we really appreciate it. I guess my question centers around what the funding is going to, what the funding is going to pay for. One of the problems that people who have been, who are abusing substances and want to get help have is finding rehab centers to get them the help that they need. And after that, finding a means to get them out of the neighborhoods they were in. Because one of the first things they tell you in rehab is that you're not supposed to go back to where you were. That made it easier to use. Does the funding cover any of that? Has that been addressed at all?
Yeah, so there's and so the 3 areas that we're investing with the settlement are really focused on expanding mobile methadone, and so that's access to treatment where you are, expansion of the wound care ban, and so making sure that wounds aren't the barrier to accessing treatment, and then also increasing the dosage in the prisons, and so that's to ensure that individuals that are most vulnerable when they're coming out of the prisons aren't relapsing and overdosing. The question that you're asking isn't necessarily going to get funded through the settlement, but it is getting funded through general fund, right? And so there's the settlement is $20 million, but there's a lot of other investments that are happening across the city in this space. And so I know that the Department of Behavioral Health has been working really hard to ensure that if anyone is interested in treatment, they're able to get access to it the same day. So there's been a lot of work put into that through the treatment strategy with the Opioid Response Unit, but then also your piece on being able to not return to where you came from. That's part of the housing investment that we're doing through the settlement, but then also additional housing investments as well. And so there is a lot of focus on trying to support individuals that are interested in starting that recovery journey and making sure that we're providing them all the tools and resources to succeed.
Now, what about the individuals that aren't necessarily interested in treatment? There's been talk about Naloxone and also needle exchange and different things like that. Are these things that you're going to be, that the settlement money is going to go toward as well? Or is it mostly toward trying to get people off of heroin or opioids?
Yeah, so there is a portion of the settlement that's going towards expanding overdose prevention, education, outreach materials, and harm reduction materials as well. But again, this is also another pocket that's also funded outside of the settlement as well through the Opioid Response Unit and also through the Public Health Department. We are absolutely, our goal, right, is to try to keep individuals alive so they're able to make it to the point of deciding that they're interested in it. And so that's our goal.
Now, when it comes to settlements like these, is this like the final settlement? Is this, all that the state was able to get? Because I know that in a lot of states, folks are still saying, okay, we thank you for this money, but you owe us a lot more than that, and we would like to have it. Is that what's going on with Philadelphia as well?
Yeah, and so there's so many caveats built into this. And so the number that I gave you guys is the number that we know right now. But there are other cases that the city's involved with. There are other cases that the district attorney's office is involved with. There are other cases that are still pending in court. Pharmacies, this settlement is specifically the national settlement from the distributors, but there's other cases that are going. So there could be additional funding coming forth in the future, but I can't forecast that. But this is what we know right now, today on January 11th, what the city is getting over the next 18 years. But it could absolutely be potentially more funding.
Okay, now you mentioned that part of this money is going to be going toward grants for grassroots organizations. Yeah. Now, I've been covering the grassroots organization grants in terms of gun violence, and they have had moderate levels of success because in some cases, you're giving a mom and pop organization that's been funded out of someone's own pocket for years more money than they've ever seen in life. And they're supposed to have someone helping them to build capacity with that money and do various things. But that's also had mixed results. Is that something that's going to be built into your program?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was, we did take a lot of lessons learned from that project. And while it's a different funding source and different partner that we're working with on this, that's been top of mind, making sure that we are able to provide that technical assistance to the organizations, that fiscal guidance. There's compliance sessions that all the applicants need to attend. There's a lot of requirements around that just to make sure that people have all the support that they need. And it's also why we have the two different funding levels for the grant. And so it's to recognize like a small mom and pop organization that's literally running it out of their living room probably wouldn't have the capacity to figure out how to spend a $100,000 program grant in 1 year, but they could really use a $20,000 grant to help pay their rent or to help pay like program fees that they're dealing with. And so we try to make it scalable, but we do really intend for this funding opportunity to be for those organizations that have kind of been shut out of other funding opportunities. We are providing the opportunity for if they're not a 501c3, they can have a fiscal sponsor, and Scattergood Foundation that we're partnering with on this is willing to help and support these organizations as well.
Okay, and one last question.
Yeah.
This is an election year, whether we like it or not. And the opioid crisis, particularly in places like Kensington, has been top of mind for some of the people who are running for office. If you could tell the folks that are running, particularly to be in the mayor and city council, what needs to happen for the city in terms of the opioid crisis, what would you say to them? And what kind of programs would you like to see them champion?
Yeah, well, I would really like to see a commitment from the next mayor to continue the work that we've been doing in Kensington with the community and supporting their holistic, trauma-informed, equity-focused, community-led planning effort that they're starting. I think it's really important that the next mayor continues the same dedication that Mayor Kenney has shown to this community. Like we know that things are not near perfect where we want them to be, but we are at the table with them. We are meeting with them regularly. We are dedicating resources to this. And I think it's absolutely important for the next mayor to continue that commitment to the community. I think also just continuing to prioritize our requests for these programs, right? And so there's a lot of programs that started as a pilot back in 2018 that are now going citywide, and just continuing those investments. One great example is police assisted diversion that started in one police district. By the end of the Kenney administration, it's going to be in every single police district. And we think it's actually the largest type of police diversion program in the country. And so we're really excited about that. And so those are the types of things that we're seeing value. The PAD program that's police assisted diversion, has great data on all the, just for Kensington, and all the connections that they made for individuals that had been diverted into their program, that they've been able to connect back to their either home county, to their families, or got them into treatment in their home counties. And that is, for those that understand the systems at play, that is really difficult and challenging work. They've been able to connect hundreds of individuals just this calendar year to those types of programs back in their home county. And those are exactly the types of things that we need to continue investing in moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. I'm going to give you back to Larry McGlynn, and you're listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
Thank you, Denise. And I just have one last question for you here. These programs the plan is to have them implemented by the end of Mayor Kenney's term in office.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you the hard question here. What does success look like beyond that?
Yeah, and so that's why the continuity of the plan of how we're spending the settlement living within the Opioid Response Unit, it's part of our action plan, and so that we have every year. And so all of these items that we announce that we're funding, they're going to be the benchmarks, right? Like, we need to hit them in this calendar year. And if not, like, we need to be accountable for why we didn't hit them. And we continue to identify additional things to focus on. They're informed by our internal overdose fatality review process that we have that provides recommendations on how to improve different processes, whether it's internal or external, with our health partners, on how to improve outcomes. So those recommendations are always moving in our action items. The data and program evaluation we'll see from these always leads to new recommendations moving forward and new action items for the Opioid Response Unit to focus on, but also looking at our not colleagues, counterpart cities across the country, and just sort of what they're experiencing. And anytime that there's an innovation that they're seeing good progress with, we try it as a pilot and we see if that works. And sometimes things don't work, right? Like Philadelphia is a really beautiful, unique, really challenging city, right? We're the largest poor city in the country. So, and that brings with it different challenges. So we don't always see the same outcomes as other cities, but we're always looking. And so what does success look like? It looks like we're continuing to, anything that's a pilot that's working, we're expanding. Anything that we think we haven't tried yet and that we think would work, we're continuing to try it, because we're all about this like fail fast mentality. Like we are willing to try anything in Philadelphia to address this. It is such a crisis, and we need everybody at the table, and we don't have all the answers. We're always looking to outside experts to help us solve this, and we are open-minded. And so success looks like we're continuing that into the future.
All right, Noelle, Foizen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.